Hello, and welcome to the Little Pain and Big Gain podcast, where we try to give you the smallest headache for cramming in the most amount of information that we can. And today is episode 2, with our topic being memory. Now, I just want to say that this kind of piggybacks our last podcast of neurons and taking in information from the environment, which leads us perfectly into the first of 3 steps in memory, which is encoding, which is taking in information from the environment and turning them into signals that the brain can process. Now, this is exactly what we talked before of taking in sight, sound, what you taste, what you feel, just anything, and turning it into signals that the brain can process. Now, the second step is storage. Now, we kind of discussed this too, where the neurons are interacting with each other and making these pathways in order for us to come back and remember. And it's split up into 2 categories of short-term memory, which only lasts in our brain for a couple minutes, also known as working memory, or long-term memory, where it's engraved. These ideas are engraved to our minds, where we could come back weeks, months, years later. And the last step is retrieval, which is what we basically think about memory. We're going back in our brain and remembering facts, details, or anything, and that bases off of recall or recognition. While recall is basically just the top of your brain, just thinking and pulling it out and just understanding and knowing what it means. And recognition uses these cues, either visual, environmental cues, which basically means that something pops up and reminds you of it. Now, these could be words on a test, which is why multiple choice tests are a bit easier, because you see these cues and it brings back these memories to where you understand. Now, I also want to jump over to amnesia. Yes, we all have heard of amnesia before, of forgetting your old memories after brain trauma, which is usually seen in movies. But amnesia itself is defined as a condition characterized by a partial or total loss of memory. And there's 2 main kinds of amnesia, which is retrograde amnesia. And retrograde amnesia is struggling to retrieve old memories, which is what you usually see in movies, where you can't remember things from your past. And the second kind of amnesia is anterograde amnesia, which means you can't form new memories. Now, the best way that you can explain it, which we've all heard of, is getting blackout drunk, to where you're drinking too much and you just can't form new memories and you don't remember last night because your brain just stopped making these connections. Now, amnesia is usually caused by head trauma, which we all usually know of, which is like brain damage to your prefrontal cortex, to where it can't retrieve the information, go back. The hippocampus, where it can't make the memories into the long-term memories, or any other parts of your brain that relate to basically solidifying these pathways so that you can remember. And neurodegenerative diseases also prevent this, to where your brain is just slowly degenerating, and it's harder to remember, also known as Alzheimer's, which a lot of you guys have also heard of. And there's so many other ways that this could happen: drug abuse, alcohol abuse, and etc. There's so many other ways, but I just think it's really interesting, the idea of amnesia, because there's these 3 steps which seem pretty simple, of taking in the environment, making these pathways, and then being able to go back and recall these memories. But retrograde amnesia, which is struggling to remember these pathways, the pathways were in your brain at some point, and some kind of trauma or degenerative disease either cut those pathways off or entangled them to the point where you can't remember them, which is really interesting to me, because once that's severed, it's hard to go back and remake those connections, and for those people, you just can't. And anterograde amnesia is interesting in the fact that you just stop encoding. Like somehow your brain turns off and you can't make new memories, which is weird because it's shown in studies that they can remember these flashbulb memories of things that you can clearly see in their big points of lives, but they just can't seem to make new memories. And just losing this, like one of those 3 steps in your memory can change everything. And that's just really interesting to me because it's all pathways, and once one is severed or can't be made, then your memories are just gone. And I hope you guys find that interesting too. It definitely made me think about how our memory works and how these 3 steps are so in-depth. I hope you guys learned something, and thank you.